In this brief lesson, we're going to talk about the basics of headers and footers. Fundamental to headers and footers is the concept of page breaks and section breaks. So we might want to get familiar with that lesson first and then come over back to headers and footers. So to get started with headers and footers, let's create a brand new blank document. So we'll come over here to the File tab and click New and Blank Document. Okay, now we have a nice fresh blank document. I'm zoomed in quite a bit. If you need to change your zoom for working, you can always hold down your Control key and then scroll the mouse on your wheel. That'll change it. Also down in the bottom right corner, you do have a zoom bar. You can grab that and you can pull that back and forth, as well as a plus and minus that you can click on. And every time you click on that, it'll change it by 10%. The other thing I want to point out on this brand new page is I'm on the Home tab and I have a command currently active right here. You can see the gray behind it, and that's called your Show Hide. And it says here, show paragraph marks and other hidden formatting symbols. So I have that turned on because I think it's so important to see all of the symbols of the different kind of formatting you're doing, including spaces and section breaks and things like that. So with that activated, let's generate some nice fresh text to work with. So to do that, we're going to use a function in Word called random. And to do that, you say equals, R-A-N-D, open parentheses, I'm going to say 25, 5, close parentheses. That means generate randomly 25 paragraphs with 5 sentences each. As long as my cursor is on the outside of those parentheses, I can just hit the Enter key and it will create all of those. And if I look down here in the very bottom of my status bar over to the left, we'll see I'm on page 4 of 4 and I've got almost 2,000 words generated. And this is nice, clean, it's all normal format. And I can see up here in the top in my styles that this is all whatever I had earlier defined as normal. This is that normal style. Okay, well, we're talking about headers and footers. So why don't we go ahead and start building the document out a little bit, and let's create a title page, shall we? So I'm going to just hit Enter here to create a line, and I'm going to say headers and footers, and I'm just going to click anywhere on that text, and up in my styles, I'm going to choose title style for that and click OK. And I probably want one more enter under here. So with my cursor right here, I'm going to do a page break, forcing my text to start onto the next page. So I have two ways of doing that. I can go to Layout, I can go to Breaks, and choose Page Break. I can also just put my cursor right here and do Control Enter, which means you hold down the Control and you tap Enter. So this forced my text down here to a new page. And if I look up here, I can see that I have header and footer, and then nothing's here. It's always, and it just breaks. As soon as it gets here, it breaks to the next page. So I could add some more here, couldn't I? I could put in the date or something if I wanted to. But I'm always safe in knowing that there's going to be a break before you get to this text. No matter what I do up here, no matter what I add or subtract up here, this text will always start at the beginning of the next page because it has a page break right in front of it. Okay, so I have a title there. And so that's all good. So let's talk about headers and footers. And let's start with the concept of headers. Now, there's several ways to get to header. I rarely use the commands up here to get to header and footer. For instance, I can't even find it, like insert, and then all the way over here to the header and footer group, and here's header and footer, right? I don't think these are used very often because it's so useful to just put your cursor where you think you want your header, which is at the top, so you think you're about in the right spot, and just double click. So I double click and it puts me into my header and footer editor. So I see my cursor blinking in my footer. I noticed up above that I have something called a contextual tab, a tab that was never there before, called Header and Footer Tools. I have a Design tab, and I have all these commands to help me create a header or a footer. So it's all right there. And then there's even a close header and footer right here when I'm done with it. But if you double click outside, it will close it. So we're designing this header and footer. What do we want our header to be on the very first page? And we really have to think in those terms right away. I'm on page 1. I'm deciding about a header and footer. And what do I want here? And I also need to decide right now, do I want a different header on my first page than my other pages? Quite often we do want a different header on the first page. Sometimes that different header is no header. I just want to see a title page, and then I'll have headers, and footers on my other pages, but I don't want it on my title page. So we could say like confidential here, but not have that on the other ones. So I'm going to leave this blank. But here's the trick. I have to check this box called different first page. If I do not check this, that means that when I go to add a header on the next page, it'll put the header on the first page too, because all headers are the same unless we tell it different. And we'll be talking about how to tell it different by using section breaks. But by default, they're all the same. So I'm going to leave this blank, but I am going to check different first page. Okay? And I come down here, and I also have first page footer. And I don't want anything here either. I don't want to put a page number or anything because this is my title page, and I don't want a page number. So I'm leaving that blank, but I did do different first page here at the top. So very good. So let's go to the second page where maybe we do want something different here. So maybe over here, I'm going to say my company logo, and maybe over here at the other end, I'm doing something like the name of the report. So I have logo and name of report, and I used a few tabs to separate this out. And the reason I could do that is because my formatting here was kind of left justified, and so that just worked well for me. So back to my design tab. Okay, so I have a logo and I have the name of my report here. Now let's go up to the top, and it's not up here. There's nothing here. And down here, let's see. And I also, maybe I want to start numbering my pages down here. So I come down here into the footer on my second page because my first page is different. So I'm here on my first page, and on the design tab, I have footer, and here are some different kind of footers I can choose from. Like here's Austin, page 1. Here's a blank 3-column footer that lets you type whatever you want. 3 different things can be down here. It's kind of like, 3 items like page number, confidential, name of your company. Or maybe you just want page numbers. So I come over here to page number, and I have different kind of page numbers. Like this is all going down here on page number. So let's go bottom of page, and I want accent bar number 1. So now I get this really nice. Do you see this gray accent bar all the way across the bottom? I get a number 2. I get this pipe character, and then I get page here in a light gray. So this is very nice. And do you see it says page 2, not page 1? Up here, I don't have page 1 because I didn't put anything in there. But if I had unchecked that box, any header and any footer would be on every page. Okay? So how do I get out of this? I can click close footer header. I can also just double click. So we have logo, name of report up here. I'm going to scroll down. Look at this. Logo, name of report. Logo, name of report. It just keeps continuing because anything you put in one header or footer goes to all the other header and footers. Unless, and this is what we need to talk about, is if you were to make a new section. Sections can be completely independent. And we talked about the independence before in the page break and section break lesson. So let's just go in and create some section breaks because we've decided that here we've got some unique data. And I'm going to just alter this data a little bit. I'm going to hit some returns here to break up these sentences so they're kind of all. And we have this unique data right here. And I'm going to make this into a table quickly. I'm going to go to Insert, Table, and say Convert Text to Table. And I'm going to give it like 3 columns. And I'm going to separate text at the paragraph, so the paragraph markers. So it gives me this little table. And I've just decided that this really needs to be on its own page. And it needs to have its own header and footer because it's just a kind of a unique situation, a unique header and footer. So I could do page break and page break, but it will still be the same header and footer. But if I do a section break, it can be a unique header and footer. So I'm going to put my cursor right here and go to Layout, Breaks, and choose Section Break, Next Page. And underneath it, I'm going to go to Layout, Breaks, Section Break, Next Page. And so now this is on its own page, and it's divided by section breaks, and that's the key. It's divided by section breaks. So we said we wanted to give it its own unique header and footer. You can see here that we created that. It broke up the header and footer. You see I don't have the header and footer right here because that new section started. So let's click right here. And I'm in a new section, and the new section is saying different first page. Well, I don't need a different first page for my new section because I only have one page for my section. So I don't need that feature anymore. So I turn that off. And when I do, it says, oh, well then if you don't want a different one, you must want the old one. So you can see right here, I'm in header section 2. Up here, what are my header section 1? Because the whole document was called section 1, but now that I created a new section, I now have section 2. So here's my section 2. But what's really cool here is in section 2, I can change this any way I want, and it can be unique. But there's one more thing I need to do. And do you see right here it says same as previous? Why do I have logo and name of report here in this new section? Because it says same as previous. And you're going to have to get used to looking at these to figure out what's happening with your headers and footers and how to make them unique. You need to have its own section, and then you need to tell that section whether it should be linked to previous or whether it should not be linked to previous. Currently, I am linked to previous. If you look up here in the header and footer tools in the design tab, you will see that this is grayed out right here, or gray background, saying link to previous. So as long as my cursor is in this header, all I have to do is click this button. It's no longer linked, which means I can change it if I want. I could say, like this now has no logo, let's say. I'm just typing this so you can see. And instead of name a report, this is called confidential, right? And so now this is very different. It doesn't say link to previous or same as previous here. And then when I get to the next section, and now I could do the same thing here for the footer. Do I want this page numbering? Actually, I do. But if I didn't, I could just simply delete it, and it would only be deleted from this section, not from everything else. I go to the next section, and what does it say? It says same as previous. Well, what's the previous? The previous was section 2, right? So really, I want to pick up section 1, and I want it to pick up from section 1 and ignore section 2. So to make that work, I can just simply uncheck link to previous. Now it's no longer connected to the previous one, and then I do need to rebuild that. I would put that same logo in here again, and I would do, that same name of report. Now, you can cut and paste that if you need to, but your only choice is to link to previous. You can't choose which section to link to. So if you do make changes, just know that you need to rebuild that. Now, I don't need to rebuild. So scrolling down here, down to its footer. Now, sometimes this is a little confusing, but we come down here and it says same as previous. The previous footer has page 4. How come I'm not seeing page 5? It should be same as previous. The reason is because this different first page has been selected by default, okay? So I need to uncheck that. Different first page. I don't want a different first page on this new section. And so the same as previous won't be a unique page. It'll just be same as previous. So that can be a little confusing. Just want to check, see what's happening up there. And so because this section said no logo and confidential, no logo confidential, I come down here, no logo confidential, it's same as previous. So let's just review that one more time. I want to uncheck the link, and this one is its unique logo and name of report and name of report. So I'm just rebuilding what was in that first section. And I come out here to the bottom and everything's good. So you just want to double check if you've got different first page happening and if you're linking to previous. If you're not linking to previous, then you can have anything unique you want if you have new sections. So here I am in section 3. And then because this is still section 3, it's still the same. That's why it's not saying same as previous, because it's the same section. So the whole section uses the same header and footer. And now I finally get here down to this bottom one. So all I have to do is double click in the document to get out of header and footer. And so here we can have unique headers and footers as long as we create sections that then allow us to change those headers and footers. And remember that we also can use the feature called different first page. And I recommend checking that box first before you do anything. Because if you type something up here in this header, and I type some sort of a header up here, I create, and then you check different first page, sometimes it'll just delete it. So you don't want that up there. So that's the basic of headers and footers. You simply double click in a header or footer area to start editing. Make sure you're in your design tab and you can see whether you have different first page selected, and you can see if you're linking to the previous section. Otherwise, all sections will always have the same header and footer, so you have to create new sections.